What's up guys, it's Jughead here, just a down-to-earth guy, trying to bring you some down-to-earth content, and today, in this video, I just wanted to sit down and have a chill conversation about storytelling, a topic I find really interesting, specifically the most fundamental pillars of storytelling, the very archetypes that, together, ultimately comprise every single story ever told and to ever be told. I might actually consider this an introductory episode to a film class type series I would want to start. I think it would be really fun. Depends how interested you all would be for something like that. Or just an introductory episode into a series where I talk about topics that just range from a whole host of things that you give me that you want me to talk about. It struck me a while ago to want to talk about something like this, but the more stories I dove into, the more of the same comments I started receiving, I decided, okay, let's talk about this. I don't mean to brag. I don't think I am, honestly, since you guys are the ones who always tell me this, but you guys continuously praise me on my ability to not only analyze characters and concepts in considerable depth, but make confident and also accurate plot and character predictions, albeit with a sprinkling and dash of mistakes along the way, because, you know, nobody's perfect, definitely not me. I love film, I love TV, I love animation, I love comics. I've just begun my journey into the realms of anime and manga. Simply put, I just really love storytelling. I love stories. They are timeless, they are mythological, they are bigger than ourselves. Some fail to realize movies, TV, anime, manga, comics, etc. are our modern day mythological stories that we are living through ourselves and experiencing in this life right now. And hundreds, if not thousands of years from now, when we're all dead and gone, future humanity will still learn about the ancient civilizations that were the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese, the Persians, the Incans, Aztecs, Mayans, the Indus Valley, Mesopotamia, etc. But they will also learn of ours as well. And that's so mind-boggling to think about sometimes. The stories told in our time will be added to that of Noah's Ark story, the Odyssey, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Socrates' Atlantis, Homer's Iliad with the Chimera or the Trojan War, Oedipus Rex, Icarus's flight, Hercules and the 12 Labors, Zeus enslaving Atlas to hold the earth on his shoulders, Prometheus giving fire to mortals, Pandora's box, Wukong the Monkey King, the Chinese dragon myths, the Jade Rabbit, Vishnu and Sheshnaga, Amaterasu. Literally, I can keep going on and on and on because I know them. I've read them all. I've studied them all. It's human history. The messages, themes, symbols, lessons, ideas, and feelings define humanity. Our modern mythologies and tales will come to join that huge and historical library. People may not like Star Wars. Some may have never even seen one of the movies or know even one single character's name, but everybody knows Star Wars. And regardless of your subjective opinion, it is not just a film. It is not just one of the most successful franchises in history. It is history. It is without a doubt the most famous, most iconic, most influential mythological story ever told in our time. A space opera that will persist through the ages. That is just one example. Take the same sentiment for the novels that are Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, that took us to other worlds, classic films like The Matrix or Citizen Kane or The Godfather, animations like Toy Story and Aladdin, comics that gave us Superman, Spider-Man, manga that give us One Piece, anime that transcended like Cowboy Bebop. I grew up a bookworm and a comic collector. I've evolved into a film buff and TV buff who's easily watched over 1,000 movies and shows easily. This channel birthed from the fact I never exposed myself to the pop culture of the East, that is manga or anime. despite having immense respect and fascination in the rest of Eastern culture, not just Japan. I just want to culture myself by traveling along this journey for a while, but you'll definitely see the film and TV buff side of me soon enough. But what am I trying to say here? I got lost in my own words. Oh yeah. My channel right now revolves around anime, Eastern and Asian pop culture overall right now. And while I haven't seen many, good stories are good stories, regardless of genre or medium. And they come from good writers, and good writers are good writers, also regardless of genre or medium. This is the thing I'm trying to get at about my ability to analyze, interpret, and accurately predict characters and plots. I sometimes wish I went to film school. I think I would have really excelled and enjoyed it, but it's a dog eat dog world in that industry where many talented people receive little to no recognition or respect, and you wear your fingernails away, clawing and scratching your way up, and you really either give yourself a heart attack or you sell your soul. Who knows what the reality of film school per se would have been in my life and where I would have ended up or what I'd be doing right now. But I have this channel. I have content to create and discussions to be had. I want to possibly produce a casual film class series on my channel. I think it would be really fun and lend perfectly to my conversational style. I've watched thousands of films, spent hundreds of hours learning about film, from reading books and essays and memoirs and biographies to watching documentaries to just sitting on my computer researching and writing notes on directing, screenwriting, editing, cinematography. And I've done the same for the art of storytelling as a whole as well. I'm just confident in my ability to dissect, pick apart, and break down stories into its smaller, more simpler pieces until, just like an atom, they can no longer be divided any further. You have reached the most basic fundamental elements and structural pillars of any given story, just as you would breaking down an atom into its proton, electron, and neutron particles, and breaking further down those protons and neutrons into quarks, the truly elementary particles of our universe. Say, I could attempt to binge One Piece, Hunter x Hunter, Naruto, Bleach, Attack on Titan, Full Metal Alchemist, everything else, just name it, and attempt to record a film class type discussion breaking down the entire series as thoroughly as I can. I've even attempted to do that with the beginning of Naruto in small chunks, and even that was hard for me to do. To me, to try and do that in full would be such a futile effort. A film class or in-depth review on the entire series, regardless if it's a 24 episode run or a 1,000 episode run, even if splitting up into multiple parts, I can't help but feel as though there's no way I could do a justice to those stories that way. And that's what I want to make sure I'm doing without a doubt in my mind. People love these stories, these characters, these worlds, and I'm creating content not only from these stories you all love, but stories that other people created themselves. And I make money from my content, however small or large. It's small right now, just negligible. Don't even include it. My creative outlet, my version of film class, my thesis, is giving that level of time, attention, dedication, passion, appreciation, effort, and knowledge to each and every episode, just as I would as each single film, each and every episode. So by the end, that is a film class I can be proud of producing, like an entire semester or school year's worth of a film class. A 148 episode film class series on Hunter x Hunter, for example. Hundreds of episodes long film class series on One Piece. By the end, I'd hope, while I believe you too could say not many or next to no other channels or content creators out there appreciated and understood a story as much as Jughead did. And if you want to experience the best place for following along a person's journey into whatever story who does do it a justice that it deserves, it's this channel right here. That's my goal. That's the best compliment I think I could get. My level of analysis and my predictions you guys praise derive from being a student of the game. That's the simplest way I can put. I try really fucking hard. I don't like people who talk yet say nothing. I don't talk just to make noise, and I don't like people who do. I don't want to just make content. I want to make high quality content. And to me, high quality doesn't necessarily mean flashy intros, amazing graphics, 4K camera, studio lighting, $500 microphones, or cinematic editing, or the hardware equipment that you'd find in an actual production studio. High quality to me are my discussions and my conversations, the quality of myself that I bring to you. I want you to walk away from your phone or your computer, wherever you watch YouTube, or you click off your YouTube tab and either go about your day or you go to bed after an hour so long video from me and know that you got something of value out of it. That's the first thing I would tell any new content creator if they were interested in creating content is produce something of value. That's why I try to incorporate and intertwine subjects like philosophy, sociology, religion, spirituality, existentialism, metaphysics, and I make analogies or connections or references to other film, literature concepts, biology, chemistry, physics concepts, a whole lot of shit. And I can analyze the way I do and rant on and on and on for hours, making predictions, formulating theories, profiling characters, because I put in serious work. Actually a shit ton of effort. The meme of this channel in the beginning was me running out of paper in my notebooks back when I was actually writing notes because of the pages and pages of notes I would write. And I had to go to typing it up on my computer. The answer is easy when spoken, like, oh yeah, I just try really hard. But I can't actually really word it properly or truly explain to you how passionate I am about storytelling and how much time goes into each and every discussion and video. And that's why I think I need to officially stop fucking apologizing for not uploading more frequently, because behind the scenes, I know what I'm doing, you know? I know what I'm crafting and producing to provide y'all and upload on my channel. I'm making sure this next discussion is fucking good, and the discussion fucking after that rips, and that discussion hits different. I want each video my viewers to be like, I can tell, I can feel the time and effort he put into this video. And it explains why his upload schedule is a little out of place or not as consistent. I need to stop apologizing because, for example, I know this next Hunter x Hunter discussion is gonna fucking slap. I'm going so hard, in depth, my nose might bleed. But with pure passion out of the way, having watched and studied over 1,000 films and shows, I also try to read at least 3 books a month, I guess, fiction and nonfiction. I read a lot, and much of that studying over film and storytelling has been through reading. Particularly, the most impactful studying and reading I've done on storytelling has been that of the 7 basic plots. Reading like this is what really changed my perception of storytelling and made me view things not only differently, but under a more sensitive lens at a greater focal length, microscopic. Let's talk about the 7 basic plots. This is how I find characters, plots, tropes predictable for the most part. Across all of human history and time, telling stories to each other, from sitting around fires and etching on stone as cavemen to premieres on the silver screen at your nearest AMC, there has only existed 7 basic plots, and there will only ever exist about 7 plots. And of course, you have to picture it like a tree with many branches growing outwards, as the characters portrayed in each of these plots will be different with their own goals, with their own journeys, their own trials and tribulations. Each plot comes with their own subtropes and sub-archetypes. Different plots yield different characters, and they inhabit different environments and different writing structures with their own host of cliches, symbolism, metaphors, messages, and an overall tone. And then those will branch off too, and so on and so on. Essentially, there is no new or unique story to be told. Every bedtime story, novel, comic, manga, film, anime, TV show, blockbuster, play, opera, what have you, every story ever told in human history falls within one of the 7 basic plots. Strip away the aesthetics from Hunter x Hunter, One Piece, Naruto, Cowboy Bebop, Dragon Ball, Akira, Perfect Blue, Spirited Away, any anime, any story in its most basic form has been told already 1,000 times over. The same basic plot structure recycled over and over, just titled a different name, hosted with a different fictional world setting, occurring at some other random point in time, populated with their own unique characters, pursuing whatever their goal is that moves the plot forward, their MacGuffin. I'm pretty sure many of you have heard that word used before, the million plot device. But those are the things that make each new story refreshing. Even if the plot can easily be defined as one of 7, a good writer still needs to exist in order to write a good story that breathes such fresh air into our souls. I talk about archetypal storytelling as frequently as I do because of how deep I have gone into the study of these archetypes. I think I was actually first exposed to this concept randomly while reading and learning into Kurt Vonnegut. I'm sure many of you know who he is, or I hope you do, or you ought to. He was an amazing author, and I've enjoyed much of his literary work. I would recommend Cat's Cradle, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, Breakfast of Champions. I would read those before getting into Slaughterhouse-Five, the novel most are probably familiar with, at least in name. He himself was incredibly fascinated with the shapes of storytelling, trying to make sense of our human behavior. If you imagine just a simple graph with the beginning to end on the x-axis going horizontally and good or ill fortune on the y-axis, you can graph, line, plot out, or shape a character's fortune over the passage of time in any given story. You end up with almost mathematical outcomes, that of sine or cosine curves, wavelengths up and down, the fortune of characters. He saw very common myths and tales that echoed across all human culture. When you graph out so many stories and end up with only a handful of unique results, that's where he became aware of the limited storytelling potential that exists for us. What I really appreciate about Kurt Vonnegut as an author is the fact the shape he found most interesting of all was that of the straight line from beginning to end. His style of storytelling was so unique. It made distinguishing a character's good fortune and misfortune as effectively impossible. He thought, and I agree, that these kinds of stories were truest to real life. Take Slaughterhouse-Five, for example. Actually, do I have I do actually have Slaughterhouse-Five. Take Slaughterhouse-Five, for example. Listen to this and think how fascinatingly unique and unpredictable a plot this is in determining one's fortune. Billy Pilgrim, a man whose life is forever scarred by his firsthand experience of the tragedy of war, is the main protagonist of the story, beginning with his capture and imprisonment by the Germans during the final years of World War II, quickly scattering to other narratives and episodes of his life, both before and after the war, including his encounter with a bizarre alien race and travels to their planet Trofalmador. I think I remember that's what it was called, Trofalmador. You see, Billy Pilgrim lies in bed, unable to sleep, because he knows in exactly 1 hour he will be abducted by aliens. He knows of their arrival because he has become dislodged in time, causing him to experience the events of his life out of chronological order. Imagine experiencing your own death before your wedding day. Billy Pilgrim travels back and forth through time, experiencing everything from childhood vacations with his family, his career as a middle-aged optometrist, his captivity in an intergalactic zoo, to the suffering he endured in his time as a prisoner of war, and more, continuously moving unpredictably forwards and backwards through time. It's the story of a man who visits the home of alien beings who exist in all times simultaneously. You could say beyond the fourth dimension, therefore, they are not only absent of emotion, but privy to the knowledge of future events even before they take place, including the destruction of the universe. A man who learns that free will is nothing but an illusion, with a life cast in irony up until the very end. Despite escaping imminent death his entire life, mastering one's fate is an impossibility, even to a man who can experience his own death before he dies. How can you interpret good and bad fortune when, to a Tralfamadorian, upon a person's death, they only appear to die, as death is only misfortune in that particular moment, while that same person is very fortunate and very much alive and fine in plenty of other moments in time? Distinguishing good and bad fortune and predicting rises and falls becomes next to impossible. That is what I love, and very few authors or screenwriters are able to accomplish this as well. But when they do, just wow. In our lives, all we are victims to a series of accidents, coincidences, unplanned events, in essence, total unpredictability. We walk and fall into an infinite number of moments that we can never and never will be able to see how they affect or influence us and our lives long term. We are not Billy Pilgrim. Vonnegut disliked clean, tidy, satisfying story arcs because they run at odds with real life and flow against the grain of reality. That is why, if you read his novels, you'll notice him explore the ambiguity between rises and pitfalls, good fortune and disaster, by ditching straightforward plots in chronological order and clear-cut fate and fortune. I make pretty damn good predictions. One cannot predict where a Vonnegut story is going. And I hope by spending a couple minutes going a little in-depth into Vonnegut, you can understand just how thoughtful, dedicated, and fascinated with storytelling he was. Not just his own, but humanity's overall historical, cultural anthropology of storytelling. So much so, he wrote an entire master's thesis on the shapes of stories idea, which actually got rejected by the University of Chicago. Like, imagine rejecting an essay written by one of the most respected and influential authors of the 20th century. He summarized his essay in one sentence, I believe. Like, the fundamental idea is that stories have shapes which can be drawn on graph paper, and that the shape of a given society's stories is as interesting as the shapes of its pots or spearheads. Essentially, he was saying the stories that those cultures told, the style and shape of them, are as important and interesting and as beautiful as the spearheads and the pottery we dig up in those ancient ruins. I think with that, an experiment was run where computers were used to analyze over 1,700 of the most culturally significant stories across all human history around the globe, from scripts to novels to ancient texts, tracking keywords, emotional content, and context. And after the computers finished analyzing, it was concluded out of all 1,700 plus stories across all human history, they could all neatly fall into one of 6 basic plot categories. Now, I believe Kurt Vonnegut started with 8 himself. They were like Man and Whole, Boy Meets Girl, From Bad to Worse, Witches Up, Cinderella, Creation, Old Testament, New Testament. Man and Whole, for example, I'll just briefly describe a couple of them for you. Man and Whole, for example, picture a cosine curve. For the non-math people, I guess, picture a valley or a pit. You know, why the hell don't I just draw them? Like, okay, why am I going to bring paper and a Sharpie out? I'll just scan them in and do my computer editing magic and have them magically appear on screen for you. Literally, fall in a fucking hole. This story is told over and over again, but it doesn't have to always be about a guy or falling in a hole, although ironically the novel and movie Holes is a perfect example. It's just the archetypal story of somebody getting into some trouble or hardship, getting out of it, and ultimately ending up better off for the experience. That's why it's no accident you see the drawing, the curve at the end is higher than where the character started at the beginning. Or let's do Boy Meets Girl. Boy Meets Girl, again, doesn't have to be about a boy meeting a girl or a girl meeting a boy, a person even meeting another person. It's somebody, just an ordinary ass, blend in with the crowd, unimpressionable person, stumbling upon or comes across someone or something perfectly wonderful, wonderfully perfect. Better not fuck it up. Well, what do you know? Who could have guessed it? They fuck it up. And they lose whatever they got. And in the end, they get it back forever and happiness prevails. Not my favorite trope, but when done well in, you know, like a spiritual sense or existential manner, I fuck with it. Then you got like one of the most popular stories ever fucking told, the Cinderella archetype. Despondent teenage girl, mother dead. Rightfully so, I guess. She would be depressed. Father remarries to someone with 2 utter bitch daughters who treat her like trash. So, you know, things are just bad as can be, you know. Sounds familiar, I know. It's almost like I'm retelling the story of Cinderella here. And it's like, ooh, there's going to be a party at the palace. How exciting. Not, because she has to help her 2 ugly bitchy sisters and extra ugly bitchy stepmom get ready while she is forced to stay home. But does this make her situation worse? Not necessarily, because how can this be any worse than her own mother's death? That was enough already. Nothing is worse than that. And then, holy shit, fairy godmother pops her big ass up out of nowhere, hooks her up with some makeup, sexy, elegant dress, and some Hot Wheels to get to the party. This is where we see the stair step rise up the fortune axis. And it don't end there. She shows up, literally belle of the ball. She's now nearly reached the tippity top of the good fortune mountain. And ding, clock, as promised, strikes 12, and all is taken away again. And that line drawn that went up step by step, soared to its peak, now comes crashing straight down, though not as far as in the beginning, because no matter what happens after this, she would still have those experiences and memories of the prince being in love with her and her outshining her sisters. So she continues to wander, meander, stroll along at her low but considerably improved level. Again, no matter what. But what does happen, the shoe fits and her good fortune skyrockets off the scale, and there you have the happily ever after fairy tale. And then you got the depressing bad to worse, or the Kafka curve. If you've ever read Franz Kafka, Do I have Franz Kafka up on my bookshelf? Yes, I do. Of course I do. My bookshelf is massive. Ugh. If you've ever read, or if you ever read Franz Kafka, like the Metamorphosis and other stories, trust me, I didn't get into other stories. I read the Metamorphosis and I was done. If you read it, you know what I mean. Like, bruh, talk about fucking sad and just a bummer of a story. This shit just depresses you. Characters already starting off way down near the bottom. Unattractive, not so personable man. Toxic family, dead-end job, or unemployed, no friends, no girl. Wakes up one day and man's just goes off the fucking deep end. That line just goes off a cliff and stays there. Pessimism at its finest. Vonnegut himself would probably be in the which way is up, the no good news but no bad news either story, or the Hamlet archetype, since that's one of the most iconic flatline from beginning to end works out there. Shout out to Shakespeare for making a rare classic that I actually really enjoyed reading. If you've ever read Hamlet, I feel like if you're from America, you probably have. I don't know schooling in other countries. Shakespeare and Hamlet is usually read in high school at some point. But if you have, you know Hamlet is quite similar to Cinderella. The biggest difference really would just be the gender swap. Hamlet is another despondent teen. Pretty sure he was a teen. I don't remember. Yet another despondent teen. His father has died, and his mother remarries his uncle, his father's brother, who's a total asshole, of course. See the similarities between the two? See, you start to notice how similar human storytelling is, even if one is an English play from the 1600s, while the story of Cinderella is known to most as a 1950 Disney animation. Hamlet is walking along the same path of despair as Cinderella at the same level of misfortune. All of a sudden, instead of a fairy godmother showing up, you have Horatio lead Hamlet to a ghostly apparition of his father, who speaks to him, telling him, "I'm your father. I've been murdered. Your uncle did it. Avenge me, my son. I'll tell you how." This is where the stories diverge and two unique archetypes are formed. Was this good or bad news for Hamlet to learn? Which way is up? Which way is down? 400 years later, nobody, including Hamlet himself, knows if that figure really was a ghost and if that ghost really was his father. All we know is Hamlet listened to what he was told and attempts to put on a play, reenacting how his father was supposedly murdered, trying to see how the uncle will react. Well, the performance fucking flops. He doesn't get the reaction he wanted, and literally nothing happens. If nothing happens, well, how can you say whether that is good or bad? Hamlet speaks with his mother in private. He is obviously paranoid and uneasy as you read the story, so when he suspects someone is hiding behind a moving drape, he says, "Fuck it, no longer will I be indecisive," and stabs through the drapery, killing Polonius, the fool and disposable, expendable character of the story, giving into that irony of death, just like Slaughterhouse-Five plays into. Polonius' entire character was a neither good news or bad news archetype, displaying those branches I described earlier, extending past plot and into characters and subtropes. A no good news, no bad news plot archetype bleeds into no good news, no bad news archetype characters. Okay? I don't have the exact quote because I'm too lazy to find it, but Polonius told his children something like, "Neither a borrower or lender be." Okay, so what are you supposed to be? What is life but endless give and take. And then he says, like, above all else, to thine own self be true. So you told your kids exactly who to be and not be, but at the same time, you're telling them to be themselves and don't listen to others. Literally nothing to take away from that. So again, going into the archetype, nothing good, nothing bad. This is why Polonius is a complete airhead moron who he didn't deserve to die, but nobody cares that he does die. So Hamlet murders Polonius, who I'll just remark was the father of Ophelia, his former lover, who kills herself because of him. But he's the prince. He isn't gonna get arrested or punished for such a thing like killing. He can literally do whatever he wants, including kill. So just like he was tired of being indecisive and impulsively killing Polonius, he is again annoyed at his indecisiveness, being no closer to avenging his father's death, as we, the audience, still don't even know for a fact was actually murdered. And Hamlet again says, fuck it, I'll accept this duel from Laertes, son of Polonius, I'll say. And he's fucking killed. His father isn't avenged. In fact, he joins him in the afterlife, dead as well. Does Hamlet go to hell? Or what? Is he judged as malicious or just in his moral actions? Did he do right? Did he do wrong? Difficult to ascertain and never expanded upon. But nonetheless, quite the significant difference from Cinderella, I'd say, right? But also not so similar to Kafka, too. So where does Hamlet fall between the two, or any archetype, you know? Who knows? Better yet, who cares? That's not the point. Shakespeare's Hamlet is pure Vonnegut. Or I guess the other way around, Kurt Vonnegut is pure Shakespeare. We are left with flat story arcs, beginning to end. No arc drawn at all. The complete antithesis of what I have been talking about, and the concept of predictability in storytelling. But if there is no arc, then why do we recognize Hamlet as a masterpiece? Because it tells the same thing Slaughterhouse-Five does, the truth. And you know what is so rarely told in the classic rise and fall archetypal tropes? The truth. The truth is, we know next to nothing about our own lives and life in general that it's impossible to know the good news from the bad in the first place. Now, isn't that all fucking fascinating as hell? Or is it just me and I'm alone in this side of the room here? Don't you really start to see storytelling differently when you analyze to this degree and break stories down to their most fundamental parts? Now, Vonnegut's list was condensed and simplified even further into 6 basic plot categories, and I want you to think of movies, shows, comic, manga, anime characters that you can immediately tie to each of these. It's shocking how easy it is. You got rags to riches, rise. Tragedy, or riches to rags, the fall. Man and whole, fall, rise. Icarus, rise, fall. Cinderella, rise, fall, rise. Oedipus, fall, rise, fall. I was satisfied with this simple list, but the research and information really just stopped there. There wasn't anything else to really dive into after that. Until I discovered Christopher Booker, who is most well known for his own theory that he dives into way, way deeper than Vonnegut did. And he wrote his 2004 book, The 7 Basic Plots, the whole essence of this episode, of this video. If you want to understand storytelling and perceive shit differently, read that book. I read it, and along with the sheer amount of effort and time I put in, I'm where I'm at with my confidence and ability to analyze and interpret any story, almost any character, and I try my best to almost see into the future. But if you don't feel like it, hey, no biggie. You're here. I'm here. I can teach you the Jughead, more entertaining, simplified version. Vonnegut laid the cornerstone. He was the architect. He had the vision, the creative vision, and just loosely drew it out on paper. Well, Booker, to me, is the engineer, the tactician. He took that blueprint scribble and constructed the pillars himself, to where now these are the established, agreed upon 7 plots. I'm going to include my own examples as I go through each category, but I want you to think of stories you know as well and see how neatly they go. And maybe we'll even think of the same films, the same shows, the same anime, even ancient tales too. And then as you do this, as the plots are connected, start to compare the personalities, the goals, the journeys of the characters within those stories, and start to see how similar they are to each other. Oh, also remember, stories can fall into multiple archetypes. They aren't reserved to or restricted to just one. So, let's begin. Number 1, overcoming the monster. One of my 2 favorite archetypes. Our hero learns of a great evil that they must destroy in order to restore balance to the world. Falling under the shadow of mysterious evil, our character liberates the world from eternal darkness. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas love this shit. That's why they're so close. They're buddy-buddy, and they produced so many iconic works together. And why when you try to list off their filmography, you'll realize just how many of those fall into overcoming the monster. Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Braveheart, Jurassic Park, Jaws, any Marvel or DC or superhero movie ever, literally any Nazi movie. That's why you can include Raiders of the Lost Ark here. Harry Potter, Seven Samurai, David and Goliath, The Epic of Gilgamesh, Dr. No, Goldilocks, Little Red Riding Hood, Beowulf, Perseus, Dracula and Frankenstein could even qualify, Die Hard, Blade Runner, Pocahontas, Pinocchio, The Count of Monte Cristo, Avatar, Terminator, Predator, and pretty much every single anime or manga where they save the world. You know, Naruto, Dragon Ball, Trigun, Akira. Number 2, rags to riches. I like this one because of how subtle it can be used. From my time watching so many movies, I see it used more actually as a sub-trope and a sub-archetype that flies a little under the radar, weaving itself with the main archetype of a story. Rags to Riches essentially condenses the American dream. You can expect the story starts off with a sad, depressing beginning with a happily ever after or triumph at the end. Typically, your character is a modest and moral, but unfortunately downtrodden and seemingly insignificant character dismissed by most or all. Obviously, that would be the source of their despondence, until what falls in their lap essentially is the opportunity and sometimes responsibility to take up some sort of mantle and step into the limelight. And by doing so, they are revealed to be exceptional human beings who ultimately achieve a happy ending where the world recognizes them. This is Harry Potter to a fucking T. Right there is a combination of rags to riches boy who overcomes the monster, see? Karate Kid, Star Wars again with Luke and Anakin, King Arthur, Superman, so many fucking Disney movies like Cinderella, Ratatouille, Aladdin. Naruto is a perfect example. It's why I can already predict he'll become a Hokage and surpass everybody else in power. Going from Hunter x Hunter 2, though I need a little more knowledge on the mechanics of Nen before I can better understand where I think he might go. Goku from Dragon Ball, no doubt. Mob from Mob Psycho. 36th Chamber of the Shaolin is an amazing rags to riches story. Number 3, you then have The Quest, the epitome of basic. Hero goes on a journey to find something, either alone, but almost always with a sidekick, an intimate group, or an entourage. Traveling in search of treasure, like a lost ark, or the One Piece, or a person, like in Stand By Me, or something completely unknown, which, like I said before, is what we call a McGovern story. Guaranteed, our heroes encounter many challenges, trials, and tribulations along the way that make the quest exciting and suspenseful. This one is just super easy. Raiders, Stand By Me, The Goonies, The Three Wise Men, The Odyssey, Lord of the Rings, of course, Star Wars, The Aeneid, Wizard of Oz, Finding Nemo, Harry Potter after the fourth book. Again, Hunter x Hunter, Gon searching for his father, Killua searching for his McGovern. Samurai Champloo fits perfectly. Cowboy Bebop, even though I haven't seen it yet, I already know it's a quest. One Piece, obviously, even though it's not exactly a hero's journey, it doesn't have to be. 4, Voyage and Return. Normal, everyday characters who are suddenly thrust upon out of nowhere into a strange or dangerous situation or unknown world and must return to where they belong. Our hero or heroes return home where the world is the same, but somehow they themselves are the ones changed forever. Alice in Wonderland, I'm pretty sure The Hobbit, Chronicles of Narnia, the entire Magic Treehouse series, Back to the Future, Wizard of Oz again, Castaway, Lost, Toy Story, Apollo 13, Moby Dick, even though Ishmael is the only survivor to return, but comedy is number 5. How can we forget comedy? Comedy is interesting because comedy is almost always tied to another category. You can't name a comedy that isn't also, say, a quest or a voyage and return. And I'm not just talking about ha-ha funny, but more Shakespearean comedy, which is confusion that has to be resolved in order for our hero and his lover to unite type of comedy. Just a host of interweaving plots that make for a complicated series of events that end in resolution and, more often than not, a happy ending. Think of anything that blends the familiar with the downright absurd to keep you on your toes. Shakespeare mastered this. There is nobody greater in comedy than Shakespeare. And I'm talking about literary comedy. Shakespeare mastered this. Midsummer Night's Dream is the definition of comedy in this regard. But then you also have obvious comedy like Superbad. That's a comedic voyage and return quest. Same with Blues Brothers, Harold and Kumar, fucking SpongeBob. When Harry Met Sally is a romantic comedy. Monty Python for the OGs. Clerks, The Office. It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Singing in the Rain. Samurai Champloo and Trigun blend comedy and emotion beautifully, in my opinion. Let's get into the complete opposite of comedy next. Tragedy. Absent of any ha-has. The inverse to comedy. I described rags to riches. Well, tragedy tells of riches to rags, and the antagonist winning in the end. Anytime we see the consequences of our characters overreaching and their ego be too much for their own good, this can be overcoming the monster, but from the monster's point of view. Death of the hero is tragedy. Our hero is undone by the critical character flaw every one of us sees coming but themselves. Or sometimes our hero's demise arrives simply by the cruelty of fate. You know, just as Shakespeare mastered the comedy, it's safe to say he likewise mastered the tragedy too, and even the ability to marry the two together. Macbeth, King Lear, Othello, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. That's just Shakespeare. Hell, we all know who Julius Caesar was. Organized crime stories also heavily follow a tragic trajectory, and mafia movies are definitely one of my most favorite genres ever. Fun fact about me. Same with Yakuza films like Youth of the Beast, Infernal Affairs. You also have West Side Story, The Godfather, Scarface, The Departed, Reservoir Dogs, Heat, Anna Karenina, Goodfellas, John Steinbeck's The Pearl, The Deer Hunter. Oh, trying to think of Eastern films more. I already said Infernal Affairs and Youth of the Beast. House of Flying Daggers was an emotional roller coaster of a tragedy in my eyes. Parasite is a clear tragedy as well. Now, I said Overcoming the Monster was one of my two favorite plot archetypes. The seventh and last archetype is my other favorite, Rebirth. Perhaps my absolute favorite. Tragedy in a sense, but the hero realizes the error of their ways at the last moment before it's all over. Rebirth stories obviously focus on characterization and emotional, personal, spiritual development. They have to. The plot isn't as relevant. And you know, from my discussions, you already know that I care about and prioritize dialogue and character development 10 times over than action or visuals. And to me, Rebirth stories provide that like no other does, where the threatening shadow seems almost victorious until a miraculous event leads to redemption and rebirth, and a happier world is restored for our character. And they don't have to be a hero. In what I've watched and the stories that have spoke to me most, any form of physical or spiritual imprisonment culminating in rebirth and redemption. I'm not religious, but because I respect and value storytelling, myths, oral tradition, religious texts are a part of human anthropology and culture. So I have read and studied the Bible. Also, being a Westerner raised in Judeo-Christian ethics, it's possible to not have been exposed to the Bible, you know. But the archetype of rebirth is literally rooted in religion, the resurrection of Christ. There is no more historically profound rebirth story than that. You also have A Christmas Carol, probably being the best known modern example of rebirth. You know, the Scrooge as the villainous hero, the three ghosts that serve as redemption figures. Actually, when you think about it, holiday movies heavily veer towards the rebirth route. Groundhog Day, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Beauty and the Beast, Star Wars, specifically Darth Vader's arc. Actually, that might be the most pop culturally iconic and compelling rebirth story, actually. It's a Wonderful Life, Doctor Who, Pulp Fiction, The Hustler, the death of Ivan Ilyich, the fucking Shawshank Redemption. It's literally in the name. Thinking of manga or anime adaptations, first one that comes to mind would be Rurouni Kenshin. So yeah, those are the 7 basic plots. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to learn than just that. That would be on your own time if you find yourself interested in this level of storytelling analysis. I know I was told by Christopher Rivera in my community that John Gardner's The Art of Fiction is a great read. You can dive into that. I haven't yet, but I plan to. Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey is awesome. And then obviously I would recommend that you binge watch all of Nerdwriter 1, Every Frame of Painting, and Cinefix on YouTube. It's hard for me to think of examples in Eastern culture other than films since I haven't read manga and I have only a handful of anime under my belt, so I'm sure you can categorize your favorite stories since I couldn't. Eastern film in general is amazing in that, to me, they are the hardest to categorize. The stories that Eastern cultures tell are some of the most intricate I've ever consumed. Even Yakuza films are hard to categorize sometimes for me, and martial arts and war films are so complex and full. I think I did a decent job including Eastern film in my examples, but I was unable to list more just because I'd have to sit here and ponder for so long, rationalizing where best to place them, you know? I feel like that's why producing a film class series dedicated to focusing on films from underrepresented or underappreciated cultures would be awesome. Not only would I be journeying through film and anime that and other mediums and genres I've never seen before myself, but in doing that, I'd also be doing a justice and giving light to cultural works usually not appreciated as much as they should and deserve to be. As I said, Rebirth and Overcoming the Monster are my two favorite archetypes. I look at my ungodly list of ranked favorite films I keep on my phone that I update every new movie I watch that earns a spot on that list, and a vast majority of them fall under these two tropes. Obviously, many films fall under more than just one plot type. Of course they will. Overcoming the monster is often intertwined with, say, the quest, in which we refer to that as the hero's journey. Or think of Star Wars. It's probably the perfect example for this. Star Wars is fundamentally a rags to riches quest where our hero overcomes the monster on a voyage and return where our villain experiences rebirth at the end. Throw in some droids, Ewoks, and Jar Jar in there, and you even got some comedy. At the end of the day, every story you know or ever will know falls under these 7 categories. Live action shows and anime are way more complex because they can run for multiple seasons, hundreds of episodes, numerous different arcs along the way, populated with so many different complex characters. So, predicting, for example, in One Piece or Hunter x Hunter is incredibly harder because an archetype for season 1 or arc 1, there's no way you can predict or say the same for 5 arcs or 5 seasons later. But I still manage nonetheless sometimes. One Piece being a rags to riches quest, I predicted in my episode 5-6 discussion, Nami will try to map the Grand Line. There is no way on a rags to riches quest where Oda went out of his way to have her remark that she is a great navigator, that she won't jump at the opportunity to achieve greater things, only she can. As rising tides raise all ships in a successful rags to riches quest. That's where Naruto fails with Sakura and even Rock Lee. It's why Harry Potter is amazing, because imagine if they neglected someone like Ron in the trio. They didn't. They literally gave every character with a name a limelight moment, like Neville killing Nagini, or Star Wars, or Lord of the Rings, or the Goonies. The treasure fits the character. 1,000,000 berries doesn't match Nami. Itachi is a tragic character who will definitely experience rebirth or redemption, but I predict will die. This brother versus brother cliche is hundreds of years old. Nothing more predictable. It's why in like Game of Thrones, I knew Theon Greyjoy would experience rebirth and redemption, but he would die. Naruto will become Hokage. Like, you can predict so easily who his father is, and the archetype of a man surpassing his father is iconic. Sasuke will turn dark and at odds with Naruto, but probably return to the light, at least become gray. Again, the brotherly ego, pride, competitive friendship trope. You see the same thing in Mob Psycho, the exact same thing in Star Wars. Marvel up the ass. Jiraiya being Naruto's father figure, whose original father died for him, will probably die as well for him too. Same with Netero in Hunter x Hunter. The master always fails. That's why I don't really like Netero. There must always be collapse in society from top down. So, I already know Netero's probably gonna fucking die. I would love to keep this kind of discussion series going. I would love to receive topics from you guys. Anything and everything, not just anime or film, but can be about anything from philosophy to relationship advice to aliens to economics to existentialism. I do want to consider this the introduction to a future film class series on my channel, so any anime or live action film recommendations you have would be cool too. Obviously, I'd love to discuss Akira, Wicked City, Ninja Scroll, Perfect Blue, and films in a film class level style like I do already. It would be fun. So shoot me ideas. I'll make community posts for that too. But yeah, I hope this discussion provided some neat insight into how I understand storytelling, analyze stories, and make my predictions. Pulling back the metaphorical curtain to take a little peek inside my brain and the thought processes within while I make the content I enjoy that you watch hopefully wasn't boring and you managed to get something out of it, but that's gonna be it for me here. If you enjoyed the video, hitting the like button to let me know is awesome. Better yet, 60% of you who are watching my videos aren't subscribed, so if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel to stay in the loop. Keep the convo going down in the comments below where we can connect more as a community. And remember, you can always join me on Patreon and Jughead's Journey for early access and exclusive content in return. Having said all that, and with that said, so long, farewell, until next time, thank you, be happy, and I hope you have a good one. Peace.